5 homes have collapsed in Buxton, North Carolina in the span of just an hour.
It started in May 2020 with a home on Sea Oaks Drive.
32 homes have gone into the Atlantic Ocean since 2020, not damaged, not flooded, gone into the water. And 20 of those collapsed in Buxton alone since September 2025. 6 of them fell in a single afternoon. 5 more in a single day a month later. A reporter from Fox Weather was standing on the beach live when one collapsed directly behind her. The National Park Service has pulled more than 500 truckloads of debris off the sand since it started. Not boards, truckloads. And the smell on that beach right now is gasoline, septic waste, and salt air mixed together. Because these houses did not just fall apart. They split open. And everything inside them, the propane tanks, the treated lumber, the septic systems, spread for miles down the coastline that families swim on every summer. But here is the part the collapsing house footage never shows you. Most of these homes were built in the 1970s and 1980s. When they went up, there was plenty of beach between the front door and the water. A real buffer, hundreds of feet of sand. The ocean was not a threat, it was a view. The people who own these homes today did not buy a house on the edge. They bought a house that the edge came to find. And that is the story worth understanding. Because this is not just about 32 houses. It is about what happens when a coastline that was always supposed to move gets told to stay still, and what happens when it finally refuses. Push off the North Carolina mainland and head east into the open Atlantic, and you hit a thin strip of sand bending 200 miles into the sea. That is the Outer Banks. Follow it south past Nags Head and Oregon Inlet down to Hatteras Island and you reach Dare County. 2 villages, Rodin to the north, Buxton to the south, both sitting on one of the thinnest, most exposed stretches of Barrier Island in America. On one side you have Pamlico Sound, which is calm. On the other side you have the full open Atlantic. And in between, in places, a strip of sand barely wider than a parking lot. The only thing standing between an oceanfront home and the open sea in Buxton right now is a row of wooden pilings driven into ground that is washing out from under them. At high tide, the water slides underneath, around the foundation, around the stilts, and every time it does, it takes a little more sand with it when it leaves. Here is the number that explains everything else. Buxton has been losing between 10 and 15 feet of shoreline every single year for decades. Not because of one bad storm. That is the baseline. The slow grind that happens whether anyone is watching or not. Reid Corbett, executive director of the Coastal Studies Institute, confirmed this rate has held steady for decades. But that rising seas have made it worse. And here is what rising seas actually means in practical terms. Federal tide gauge data near Buxton shows sea levels have risen 8 inches in the last 30 years. 8 inches does not sound like much. But for every inch the ocean rises, water can reach further inland during high tide and storm surge. 8 inches means the water that used to stop at a certain point now does not stop there anymore. It keeps going. So you have 2 things running at the same time. The slow grind of 10 to 15 feet of erosion every year, and a waterline that is creeping higher each decade. Together they work like a clock. The hands move slowly, but they are always moving. The 9 houses that fell in October 2025 were built between 1973 and 1998. Combined assessed value more than $5 million. When they went up, the beach in front of them was wide enough that the ocean felt far away by the time they fell. That buffer was gone, the dune line was gone. The surf was reaching the pilings at high tide and the foundations were sitting in wet sand that the water had been loosening for years. The cliff did not appear overnight. The slow grind built it 1 year at a time. The storm just walked up and pushed. On September 30, 2025, 6 houses collapsed in Buxton in a single afternoon. Many of them happened minutes apart. Hurricanes Erin, Humberto, and Imelda had been churning in the Atlantic for weeks. None of them made direct landfall. It did not matter. The swells they pushed toward the coast were enough. 8 homes went in Buxton in the span of a few days. Then 5 more on a single day in late October. A coastline that normally loses 15 feet in a year lost over 100 feet in a matter of weeks. In February 2026, a bomb cyclone nor'easter hit the Carolinas. Hurricane-force winds, heavy snow. Rough surf, 3 more homes went into the ocean. 28 of the 32 total collapses since 2020 happened in Buxton. The beach in front of Buxton Village has been closed to the public multiple times since September 2025. Not as a precaution, as a safety call, because the debris on the sand was too dangerous and because more structures were still at risk of coming down. Now think about what actually happens when a house falls into the ocean. The deck furniture is still out there. A grill, chairs facing the water the way they have for 30 summers. The high tide comes in. This time it does not stop at the dune line because the dune line is gone. The water slides under the structure. Around the pilings, you can hear the wood working against itself. A wave catches the corner, the house folds first slowly, then all at once. And the thing that was in a real estate listing 6 months ago is suddenly a debris field turning over in the surf. Dave Halleck, superintendent of the Cape Hatteras National Seashore, described what comes out of these collapses. It is not just broken wood, it is propane tanks, septic systems, treated lumber soaked in chemicals. Fragments from a single Buxton collapse in 2025 were found more than 3 miles to the north within 48 hours. The debris from Rodenth collapses extended for 10 miles of coastline. Volunteer cleanup crews were warned to wear gloves and hard-soled shoes and watch specifically for nail-ridden boards and septic system parts scattered across the sand. This is the beach families come back to every summer, and right now it smells like a construction site and a sewage leak. So why does this keep getting worse instead of better? The short answer is that these islands were never supposed to stay still. Barrier islands are not fixed ground, they are ribbons of sand, and for thousands of years these ribbons have been slowly rolling inland. Sand washes over the ocean side, marshes spread on the sound side. The whole strip migrates away from the rising sea. That is not the disaster. That is the island doing exactly what it was built to do. The disaster is that we paved it. We drove pilings into a thing designed to travel. We ran septic lines and water mains and Highway 12 across a strip of sand that has always moved. And then we acted surprised when it tried to move without us. The island wants to migrate inland. The concrete and the pilings and the roads will not let it. So instead of rolling, the ocean side simply dissolves. And every foot it loses, it takes a piece of someone's house with it. Here is where it gets complicated for the people trying to fix it. The government moves on months and years. The ocean moves on days and weeks. In 2023, the National Park Service spent over $700,000 to buy 2 threatened homes in Rodenth and tear them down before they fell. It worked, but it was 2 houses. There is no dedicated fund to demolish or move homes before they go in. When a house finally collapses, the debris cleanup is legally the responsibility of the property owner. But if they do not pay, the National Park Service ends up covering it. In 2025 alone, the Park Service removed 400 truckloads of debris from the beach. But here is the part that makes the whole situation genuinely absurd. Standard homeowners insurance does not cover shoreline erosion damage at all, even if your house is condemned by local officials. Even if engineers have told you the foundation is sitting in wet sand and the next storm will probably take it. You cannot collect on your policy until the house actually collapses into the ocean. So the system as it currently works gives homeowners a deeply strange incentive. If you spend your own money to tear the house down before it falls, which would be the responsible thing, the safe thing? The thing that keeps your debris off the beach and out of the water, you get nothing back. But if you wait, do nothing, and let the ocean take it, then the insurance kicks in. The National Flood Insurance Program pays out after the fact, not before. North Carolina Governor Josh Stein and Insurance Commissioner Mike Causey put it plainly in a joint statement in November 2025. The system, they wrote, provides a perverse incentive. Homeowners are being financially discouraged from doing the right thing. That is why the Preventing Environmental Hazards Act was introduced in Congress in 2025. A bipartisan bill co-sponsored by members from both North Carolina and Virginia. It would allow the National Flood Insurance Program to pay out up to $250,000 before a collapse, so homeowners could afford to demolish or relocate a condemned structure before it goes into the surf. Get ahead of the ocean for once instead of cleaning up after it. North Carolina's governor and insurance commissioner both pushed for it publicly. The state's congressional delegation signed on from both parties. It has not become law. The ocean did not wait to find out. Some homeowners have taken matters into their own hands and spent their own money. In March 2026, crews used hydraulic jacks and steel beams to lift a 264, 500-pound house and physically roll it 150 feet inland on a temporary rail system. Barry Crum, who runs the company that did it, described the process honestly. You look at the tide schedule and the weather window and you roll the dice. Because if a wave comes in while the house is mid-move, sitting on rollers between its old foundation and its new one, there is no plan B. That is what saving a house on the Outer Banks looks like in 2026. Moving a $250,000 structure on a tide schedule and hoping the weather holds. And then there is the sand. In May 2026, Dare County approved a beach nourishment project expected to begin in mid-June. 2 million cubic yards of sand pumped back onto the Buxton shoreline. The project is backed by $30 million in FEMA funding. That is the largest nourishment effort in the area in years. The idea is to rebuild the beach wide enough to create a buffer again. Give the homes that are still standing some distance from the waterline. Buy time, but Riad Corbett, the coastal scientist who has been studying this shoreline for decades, said something that puts the whole plan in context. People will be sick of going to a beach that does not exist, he said. A beach with no width, littered with septic systems, debris, wood, and nails. That is what it is going to be. 2 million cubic yards of sand is a lot of sand, but the ocean has been taking 10 to 15 feet of this shoreline every single year for decades. The Nourishment Project buys time. How much time depends entirely on what the Atlantic decides to do between now and next spring. What happens next on this coastline is not a mystery. The same scientists who have been documenting it for 20 years can tell you exactly how it goes. The erosion does not pause. The next storm season begins June 1st. Forecasters are predicting a less active Atlantic season than recent years. That is not the same as a safe season. Even distant storms generate swells. Even a nor'easter that never makes landfall can push enough surf to take a house down in a weekend. Every home still standing on the front row in Buxton is on a clock that nobody controls. Some of those owners know exactly how little sand is left under them. Some bought recently and may not fully understand what they bought into. The buyer who closed on one of these properties in the last 2 years did not buy a home on the edge. They bought a home that the edge was already moving toward. And here is the question that nobody in Buxton has a clean answer to. What happens to the value of every property behind the front row when the front row becomes open water? What does the tourism economy look like when the beach keeps getting smaller? Billy Dillon, whose family has run the Outer Banks Motel for more than 70 years, said it plainly. The collapses have brought a tremendous amount of bad publicity. He said, along with a lot of cancellations because there is no beach. No beach means no tourism. No tourism means no economy. And no economy means the communities that have lived on this island for generations are being squeezed out from 2 directions at once. The ocean from one side, the costs of surviving it from the other. The island was always going to move. These islands have been migrating for thousands of years. The only question was always whether the people on them would move with it or fight it. Right now the answer is fight it. Sand, pilings, FEMA funding, congressional bills that have not passed. And tonight on the front row in Buxton, the tide is coming in again. The surf is reaching the pilings again. And somewhere down that beach, the sand is still washing out from under a house that is still, for now, standing.